My name is Michael Waits. Thank you for joining us for this very special edition of Insurance for the New Possible. We are broadcasting live from the Chubb Insurance booth at the Singapore Fintech Festival, the largest fintech festival in the world and a knowledge platform for the global fintech community. We could not be more excited to be here. Now let's welcome George Kesselman, the president and founder at InsurTechAsia, with whom we will discuss innovating from the core, the real engine for insurance innovation. Insurance for the New Possible is back live at the Singapore Fintech Festival. George, I can't thank you enough for doing this. I feel like I see you a lot now.
Yeah, indeed. It's a pleasure to be back.
It's awesome to be here. Can you feel the energy at the Fintech Festival today?
I think the energy is really picking up. Yesterday was a little bit slow to start with.
Yeah.
I felt like people was kind of getting back
getting used to it,
yeah.
like getting back into it, right? It's weird. Normally day one is like boom, and day two kind of slows down. But I feel like in this case, everyone kind of got here, was looking around, and now today I feel like it's in full force.
Exactly.
I'm super happy to be here. Let's jump right into this. How do we see tech as an enabler? And I think we have to talk about this in the context of AI in transforming insurance business models.
I think it's a very interesting question. Like this year has been so much talk about AI, and again, it kind of, I think there's a fear that it's going to become another buzzword and the hype and become isolated. But I think you're right that it is very much an enabler play to enable that transformation as it continues to happen.
Right.
I think the whole kind of the convergence between transformation that was happening over the last, like, I don't know, it felt like 15 years.
Right.
The digitalization and all the other stuff, I think is really at the point where it's making a significant impact. So it's no longer like something that was an idea, something that was a pilot, is really making a very, very clear impact and enabling this kind of a next phase of efficiencies.
I think you've made a really good point, and I want to dig a little bit deeper, and I'll tell you why. We can talk about buzzwords, and I'm so glad you brought this up. If we'd been at the FinTech Festival last year, we would have talked about blockchain. Yep. If we'd been here 5 years ago, we would have talked about Ethereum and smart contracts. If we'd been here 4 years ago, we would have talked about insurance in the metaverse. Those were buzzwords. Artificial intelligence is something that we use in every part of our day all the time. Whether it's in writing books or creating content or doing anything, everybody's using AI at some point. And when ChatGPT came out last year at this time, 100 million people signed up for it, faster than any other piece of technology ever. We're going to use it all the time, right? Do you have any specific examples maybe in the insurance industry where you see it being really relevant?
So there's, I guess, pockets of examples, but the one that comes to mind, and I think it's the most interesting in a way to think about like a potential scope for it, is one of the insurers took the AI into their call center. And in the call center, what they did is they said, look, we have a few hundred people in the call center, is high turnover environment.
Right.
We need to train people when they come in. The variability of the service is very, very high as well.
Right.
So why don't we use AI to help to train new people coming in? And all of a sudden what they saw was the gap between the high performers, 10% top performers, and the rest just closed like crazy. And everybody started to perform at that high level because they would prompt the staff to say, here's the next best kind of thing that you can suggest to the customer.
Right.
They might be looking for their policy. Here's the places to look for it. So this kind of a expertise that was locked in the way in the minds of the top performers, now it became democratized, and it was really, really impactful.
It's actually really interesting. In the old days, right, you used to get on some of these calls and they would say, we're recording this call to ensure quality, right? And I worked in a call center once, so I know what that's like. I did actually. I know you find that really hard to believe, seeing me in a call center, but I actually did do that. But now I'm presuming in this case that the AI is actually listening into the call. So it's almost like in the same way you type into ChatGPT, you tell them who you are, and then it knows what your cohort is like, that now you're just speaking into it. And it gives the person who's on the other end of the phone way more information than they could deduce on their own, which allows them to give you much better service. That's a great experience, yeah?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's super great. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about a workforce that's really engaged, right? But also valued. How important is this in the context of insurance, particularly today when all of the way we work is changing?
I think it's one of the questions that I've been pondering for a long time now, because as I kind of went through the whole InsurTech wave, and everybody was very excited about all the potential things that it can transform insurance.
Right.
I guess the common denominator between a lot of this initiative and innovation was people, and you kind of realize that you can come up with the greatest idea with the most exciting concept, but if people don't get on board and people are not engaged in the insurance organization, it's very, very hard to execute. It kind of fizzles out very, very quickly.
Yeah, it does.
It just becomes like, here's an initiative by this C-level person that, everybody just kind of rolls eyes when they think about it.
Like, we're not going to do that.
So the motivation is a most critical aspect, I think, of any change that needs to happen. And I think in insurance, one of the challenges of our industry is that the feedback cycle between when you sell the product and when you actually people use it can be tens of years or can be very, very long.
Right.
So people generally tend to lose that kind of a link and say, like, what business am I really in?
Right.
Am I in the business of selling insurance? Well, it's not really, right? And if you kind of lose that thread, it's very, very hard to get disconnected and demotivated.
So, but the policy is still alive, right? And actually, when we spoke to Sean Ringstead, right, the head of global digital business at Chubb, one of the things that he said when we asked him was, if you could change anything in insurance, what would you do? And he said, I would change using the word policy. But that product is alive from the moment it gets initiated, right? Until the moment it gets used, it's still living. And I think there are two things to talk about. Having the employees engaged, but also having the employees engaged with the people that own that product, right? So that they can then go back and forth on it. How do you think companies can accomplish this, though? Is there a tech solution to it, or is it just needs to be focused on?
I mean, I think it's a pretty fundamental question.
Yeah.
I think it kind of needs to, we're talking about like a reboot to the way that the industry is organized.
Right.
But I think there are multiple ways of doing it. And yesterday we had a very interesting panel together with Chief Innovation Officer of Ping An, Zurich, Head of Digital, Prudential, and a very interesting VC fund as well.
Oh, cool.
And what I guess we kind of went to a kind of direction is that it seems like an insurance is becoming just like rather than an isolated product, it becomes more of a service proposition, a service bundle.
Yep.
And this is what the customer is actually experiencing, and that's what they want to see.
Yeah.
And I think once that change propagates itself more, it becomes much more real to both the people working in the industry, and it becomes a lot more motivating because you can see like, oh, actually our service helped somebody who was in need, rather than like, oh, we paid somebody who had an accident 1 year ago.
Right. When we were in Miami for InsurTech LATAM with Chubb, we recorded with a guy who was, I think, based in Argentina or in Chile, I can't remember. And one of the things that he said was, during COVID, he wasn't driving his car a lot. And one day his insurance company called him. He's like, why are you calling me? I didn't call you. I don't want to claim anything. My policy is still valid. And he said, they called me to let me know that the power in my battery was getting really low. And that if I didn't do something about it or just go out and start my car more regularly, my battery was going to die because he has a telematic device in his car. Mm-hmm. And he said that level of service from an insurance company, and you can see I'm getting a little bit of a chill just thinking about it, but that made him happy. And that's part of the model I think that you're talking about. And I think that's going to be really, really important. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it is really about thinking about risks, and the insurance industry is not something that happens after the fact.
Right.
But it's something that is part of the whole recovery process.
Yeah, it's all part of the day-to-day existence. And where an insurance company come in and can provide that service, I think it's going to be really powerful. You know, one of the things you said before is you feel like it's been like 10, 15 years, this discussion of digital transformation. But I want to talk about how you envision the integration of these digital experiences with physical experiences in insurance and where they're most relevant. This is what I think you call Phygital.
Yeah, Phygital, omni-channel, hybrid, whatever
you want to call it.
Bionic.
Can we use that from now on? I like that word, actually.
So what I think is happening is that you kind of went as like a typical pendulum. Right. You went from fully physical to fully digital, and now it's kind of finding its way in between. And what happened is I had one of the insurance companies call me recently, and they said, I think we went too far. We kind of
digital?
We went all digital. How do we go a little bit back and find the right balance? And I think that's what's going to happen is we will see this experience is a lot more integrated, and we'll see that people from servicing perspective, from the sales perspective, from advisory perspective, really play a much more integral role.
Right.
But not just like, here, I'm going to push the product, I'm going to scare you into buying a product, which has been a traditional way.
Yeah.
But much more like a partnership with the customer in their experience of finding out what do they need to build their wealth, their health.
So we talked with Isabella Carvalho about this earlier. And the key question I asked her was, is it the journey that's selling the insurance, right? Is it the digital journey, or is it the relevance? And I think that's what you're saying. You don't want to make it just the journey of pushing the product.
Yep.
Of like, I just got to here, I was automatically opted in, and I got this product. How relevant was it to me? I think that's what you're trying to suggest as well. Do you have maybe an example you can share about where you think Phygital is really relevant?
Where I think the Phygital is really relevant is when you start to think about more complex products.
Yeah.
Because if we're thinking about like a very simple, like a warranty product, or if we're thinking about travel insurance product, it's more or less you kind of know what you're getting.
Right.
But if you're buying something to protect your health, a lot of the times, even myself, I kind of look at it and like, I need somebody to help me understand.
I want to ask somebody a question. Go ahead, yeah.
So when I want to ask somebody a question, if I ask it to a chat automated bot, half of the time you kind of get a very standardized response that doesn't answer your question, and creates more frustration.
Right.
So what you want to do is you want to talk to somebody who is not going to push and say, oh, today we have a promotion on something that is completely not relevant, but you should definitely buy it.
Yeah.
But should try to understand and say, hey, George, based on your age and profile, you have a family. This is the kind of stuff that typically in the families, people are looking to protect themselves. So to reduce the worry, and based on your age and demographics, this is the kind of product that could be a good fit for you.
I kind of feel like, I love making analogies like this. I kind of feel like it's okay to buy a bicycle, even a 21 speed specialized bicycle, or whoever your favorite brand is, online. You do all the research, you know what you like, but I'm not going to buy a jet online. I really want to see it, touch it, feel it, and talk to somebody, because it's a complex product. And if I buy it and it's wrong, now I have even bigger problems, right? And that's the way I look at it. I'll share a story with you as well. I think it was at the beginning of 2022. I bought my own health insurance. And the woman from whom I bought it was awesome. She was fully digitized. She had an iPad there. She was going through all this stuff, but she was there. And as we went through all the choices, I could ask her questions. She had all the answers. And the answers that she didn't have, she had the information at her fingertips. And I think that's a really great Phygital experience for me in the insurance industry. I want to talk about this too, because I think this is actually really important. After all this investment in the past, let's say 5 or so years in InsurTech, how do insurance companies go back to looking at their core businesses as engines of innovation?
I think that is a pretty fundamental question, and I think it's not just insurance companies. We've kind of seen some interesting parallels with the banks and other big companies. I think the reality of this is that they realize that now there's been more practice of investing, of seeing things that don't work out as they anticipated. So I think the tolerance for failure is a little bit higher than it was 5 years ago. And kind of that in itself is a good progress.
Do you sense that when you talk to insurers, that they feel like, you know what, it's okay if we try this thing and it doesn't work, whereas maybe 5 or 6 years ago, if you said something to them, they'd be like, yeah, we can't do that, because if we fail, it feels fatal. Do you feel that difference?
I think that there is, I would say, a pockets of difference. I wouldn't say like it's kind of universal across the insurance universe, but there's definitely pockets of the people who see that this is the way forward. And again, looking at, let's say, how the banks have done it is also not universal, right? There's some banks that are very, very traditional. And even though they kind of proclaim that they're digital, the experience that you get is very, very different. But there's some that are really fundamentally changed in the way that they do it. And you walk into the experience that they provided, whether it's digital or visiting the branch, whatever you need to, you have a completely different experience. And I think with insurance companies, actually, it's the same.
I think it's pretty obvious. And I think, to me, it's actually a big differentiator. You can talk to company A and feel like, okay, they're turning into a really progressive company, no pun intended. And you talk to some other companies and you're like, yeah, they think they're digital, but maybe they're just pretending to be. And I can feel it as a consumer, actually, right? If you look into your crystal ball, you just have a lot of conversations with insurers, just like I do, right? So when you look out 5 years, taking into consideration all the changes you see in technology, and not the buzzwordy ones, right? But like the real ones, what does the insurance industry look like to you when you look forward 5 years or so?
I think the 5 years from now, we stop talking about the digital because it just
For sure, 'cause
becomes
it's just
part of
gonna be-
the
it just is insurance, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be the big fundamental change. And if you think about the kind of the pace of change, how things are progressing,
Right.
it's almost like doubling year on year in terms of the impact.
Yeah.
So 5 years later, we're going to have a material part of the business that will be, you know, in a new way, right? So basically the new engines are going to come online and going to be material to the business, rather than right now it's still a little bit of a side project.
I think you're right. Go ahead.
So I think AI is going to play a significant part of
I agree.
What the new future is going to be look like. And I think we're going to be also seeing that there's going to be a massive consolidation of insurers that kind of been sticking to the status quo.
Right. So this is something that not a lot of people talk about, but I don't disagree with you at all. Actually, we saw that in the banking industry in the United States over time. As some of these banks got way more progressive, the other banks couldn't live on their own, and they had to kind of consolidate into each other. Before I let you go, congratulations on the new book,
Thank you,
The
thank
Power
you.
of Play. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the book's about?
Yeah, so this exactly, the motivator for it was exactly what we talked about earlier, because I felt like the motivation was such a critical asset for innovation. So when I started looking at, you know, insurance and beyond, it just became like a very clear that is a common problem.
Yep.
So motivation is just lacking, and engagement is very limited in a lot of the work that we do, in not just insurance but all across. And then when I started looking at the areas where there are places where we solve problems at scale and really feel engaged, it was hard to find. But then I stumbled upon this concept of where people go onto games and for hours they're there solving hard problems,
right,
and feel very, very engaged, right? You don't pay somebody to go and play a game.
No, they do it on their own, right?
So when I started looking at different aspects of what makes the game so engaging, it's not the gamification by itself, but it's really about providing that autonomy for people to go and solve the problems that they enjoy solving. And there are few different personalities and types of problems that the people gravitate to.
Right.
So in the work environment, if you think about it, we get pigeonholed into a particular set of problem.
Right.
You're an actuary because this is what you studied. Therefore, I'm going to put you to be an actuary
forever,
right? Whether you like it or not. And I've talked to many people who said, you know, I've studied to be a lawyer. I started practicing law. I just hate it.
Right. Lawyers say this a lot, by the way, but go ahead. Yeah.
So, and I think this is where I kind of said, look, let's start the conversation about it. Let's use this as a vehicle to really understand what is that internal drive, right? We always think of money as a motivator,
right?
But actually, when you do research, and there's been a lot of research done on that, is that it up to a certain point it's a motivator,
right? But on the margin, it's not though.
It's not.
Most
of the time, it's a demotivator. It just narrows you down into particular certain problems that you solve, but you actually get worse at solving problems with money.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you this: when I was in Morgan Stanley, I had a job that I didn't love, that was paying me a really decent salary. And I gave up almost half of it to get into a job that I really wanted to do.
Exactly.
And that's true, because it was still okay. And over time, the path here was to a lot more compensation, but it was actually, this job gave me the ability to do the things that I actually wanted to do. And I think the game analogy is really good, because some people want to play Tetris. Other people want to play first-person shooters, but they're still solving problems.
Exactly.
Right? And I think it's a really interesting concept. And I'll leave you with this, and then I'll let you go. There's been a lot of talk about customer experience. How do we build the right customer experience? A lot of companies are now talking about partner experience. Our partners aren't our customers, but boy, they feel like they are at some level. We should treat them well. Internally, you have to think, what should the employee experience be like? Because that's going to be a big differentiator too. Because if your employees are motivated and engaged, it's like a superpower, isn't it?
Exactly.
The power of play.
Spot on.
Thank you very much, George.
Right,
I really
Michael.
appreciate it. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
Don't forget to follow Insurance for the New Possible on your favorite podcast platform and on YouTube to stay up to date on all of our amazing and informative content.